Hi, I'm Melanie Barrett, and I am a functional nutritionist, and I live in Austin, Texas. For me, I actually grew up in the Midwest, and I grew up with a lower to mid-class family. Your typical childhood, right? Looks so polished and perfect on the outside. Everybody's happy. And then when you open up the doors and you actually go inside, I actually had a pretty tough childhood growing up. My dad was 100% Italian, and he felt all his feelings. It wasn't like, oh, I'm feeling. He went all in, and they were very intense feelings. And I had a mother that didn't feel anything. I never even saw my mom cry. So I grew up in this very conflicting space where I didn't know how to feel. So I really just kind of went inward, and I suppressed everything I felt. And that really continued with me. So let's fast forward to around 8 years old. I was diagnosed with ADD. At the time, there really even wasn't ADHD. It was just ADD. And I knew it was different. Everybody treated me different. I kind of struggled as a kid in school, and people made fun of me. So that was just another thing that I kind of suppressed and pushed in. And as I grew up, I was that weird, funky kid people made fun of. As I continued to grow, and when I got to high school, society and culture really starts to push on you. And I remember as a kid looking at my parents, because they fought all the time. And my father always called my mom fat and told her she needed to lose weight. So this was something that was really implanted in my head from a young age. It was really hard. And when I got to high school, this diet culture really started swarming in. I remember Atkins being a really big thing where you don't eat carbs. And I remember watching my parents' diet and me always feeling like I needed to. And I remember somebody telling me at one point in time that I was fat. And I was like, oh gosh. And I started dieting. I remember my first diet was Weight Watchers. So probably a lot of you can relate to that. So when I went on this, I was like, wow, I lost 10 pounds in 2 weeks. This is magic. And then of course you go back to your regular eating habits and then you gain the weight back. And then started this vicious loop of me having an awful relationship with food. Because I used food from all the trauma that I grew up with. I suppressed my emotions with food. I used them to cope and to get myself to feel better. So as I grew older, I was like, what do I want to do with my life? And I would go to school, and I just was so interested in nutrition because I just found it fascinating, because it was like, how do people lose weight? How does this actually work? What about calories in, calories out? And with food, and how do people do this? So I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to become a nutritionist. So as I really started leaning into this world and, fast forward, finish school, and I start working with people, and I really realized ultimately that it's not just about the food that we physically eat with our mouths. It's about the food we feed our minds is just as important, if not more. And that's what actually led me to go down more of the path of the really functional side of stuff, where the health coaching part and the life coaching part, because it's really about what's going on up here. So once I really figured out and kind of pulled everything together, that's when everything really transformed, is to really help people with their relationship with food. My biggest frustration when it comes to the health industry out there in general is that I feel like people are getting so gaslit. And I think that's the number one thing that upsets me, is you would go to a doctor and be like, oh, my hair's falling out. And then they would just be like, oh, you need some iron. They would do some blood work. And of course, what functional side of blood work looks like versus traditional doctors. But what bothers me is a lot of just doctors today will gaslight you when you come in with your symptoms, and they'll just give you a medication. And they just literally slap a Band-Aid on what's going on with you. And it's not helping. And they're not looking deeper into those root cause pieces. And even when you look at it a step further, we look at the aspect of there isn't enough informed consent for people to actually know what these medications that are just Band-Aiding and what they're actually doing for people, like the actual side effects. And I think that's what's really hard, and it's not a knock on the doctors at all. They're incredible people that want to do this. It's the systems and how it's actually built is what's really frustrating to me. Because people will come even to me and be like, oh, I want to lose weight, I want to get healthier. But I'm like, okay, you really got to take it that next step. So ultimately for me, my major commitment here is to really change how people look at the healthcare system and really want to try to fix and heal and honor and nourish their body and use food as medicine instead of this form of this punishment, or I gotta have to do it this particular way. My doctor said this, but it's so much more to that than what we think. For this particular client, when she started working with me, I would just put in light terms, she was like a diet junkie. You name that diet, she's done them all. And when you do a lot of diets, we tend to take all these different rules and regulations from each diet. So you're like, okay, intermittent fasting, I can only eat in these certain windows. Like, I'm not going to eat carbs. And then like, I'm going to eat paleo. So like, there's all these different rules in how you eat that you feel paralyzed. And when she came to me, she was so stuck on all these different rules with dieting that she felt paralyzed in what to eat and what to do. She was highly addicted to sugar. Her gut bacteria was off and it was off balance. So there was a lot going on there that she kind of needed help with. And she actually had a lot of food intolerances that were holding her back and always making her feel icky and not feeling good. So when we worked together, we were really able to help identify her baseline. And your baseline is when you're able to know what it actually feels like to physically feel good. And for the first time ever, she's like, I've never felt like this. This is magical. I'm like, this is what it actually feels like to feel good. But most of us are conditioned to walk around feeling like a trash can. So beyond us being able to go in and really help her with learning her baseline, we figured out her food intolerances and found out all the foods that were actually bothering her gut with the functional testing. And when we did that, her life completely changed. She was able to change her relationship with food because we worked on the mindset component to really help release those emotions that are usually attached to the food. And then we also went in and we figured out what was bothering her. We rebalanced her gut, got in with the right pre and probiotics and did all the different stuff that she needed. And she felt like a completely different person because of it. And that's the magic of transforming your relationship with food. As a health professional, I think one of the best things that you can truly do is invest in yourself. And I feel like that's one of the life-changing things for me, is that truly believing in myself enough and investing in myself. And when I did invest in myself and start working with other coaches and other practitioners, once again, my life completely transformed. And even working with Laura, one of the biggest takeaways that she really taught me was to give myself that spaciousness. I really and this is where I actually struggled within my business in the beginning, where I had a really hard time getting it to take off. It's because I needed to do that mindset work. And when I started to do that mindset work, I started to believe, I can work with coaches. I can invest in myself. And I threw that fear out the door. And it's when you throw that fear out the door, everything can transform for you. And when working with Laura and giving myself that spaciousness to allow myself to believe in myself, to not base my self-worth strictly on my business. And that's what I was doing. As like, if I wasn't making 6 figures, I sucked as a human. And then everything about me sucked. It's like, no. It's when and Laura gave me this tool to realize I need to take that space to be me. I need to take that space to be mom. I need to be that space to be wife. Then you insert business and everything changed for me. It really did. And I was able to get that tool by investing in myself and believing in myself. One piece of advice, if I could give any other healthcare practitioners, is that get out of your own way and believe in yourself. Because a lot of times we have this mission and where we want to go, but yet we're scared and we keep holding ourselves back. Step into that fear. Because when you lean into that fear, you'll realize fear is the direction you actually want to go, and it is your friend. The more you lean into that fear and you get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're going to lean into your mission and make this world a better place.